Welcome. Take It Up with Jessica Lee. I'm here with Chris Krackeler, who's the VP of Sales and Market Development for the higher education market at Blackbaud. Hi, Chris. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you for having me on.
I have not talked with folks in the doing social good, so this is going to be really a fascinating conversation for me to hear about what does your company do? What do you mean social good?
Yeah, so Blackbaud, we're the world's leading software company powering social good, and we have cloud software, services, expertise, and data intelligence to help organizations change the world. And I know what you're thinking, I still don't know what social good is. So just a quick example. So your alma mater, Santa Clara University, they announced a capital campaign last year. They said, we're going to go out and raise $1 billion to help propel the university into the next century and to renovate buildings, grow our endowment, and provide more scholarships. And so they're using Blackbaud to meet and exceed their fundraising goals for that campaign.
I see.
So that's just one example of what we do.
And the company is very big. It's like it's a publicly traded company. I didn't know much about it until I started researching. So you have thousands of people, and it's like on the for-profit side, which I'm a lot more familiar with. So you've got sales team generating revenue. In this case, you're a sales team generating revenue on behalf of, say, a private university. Is that right?
Yeah. We work with education, universities, healthcare organizations, nonprofits, foundations, corporations, and even some individual change agents. And so, we have solutions, and our clients, rather than, selling the proverbial widget, they're fundraising and they're raising money to do good in the world.
So you offer both the technology, the software that provide all of the processes of, say, finance, marketing, and sales, and all of that. And so in addition to the actual software applications, you're also doing the outsourcing of the sales call to generate revenue for them.
In some cases, we're doing strategy, but in other cases, we're maybe just the software or just analytics that help organizations be more precise with who they target and how they target those people.
Okay. So tell me, what are some of the trends that you're seeing in this crisis we're facing? Are the people giving less to university, given that the university is kind of shut down? Are there concerns with tuitions changing, revenue goals, and all that?
Let's talk about giving trends first, and then let's talk about a little what we're seeing in higher ed. So, by and large, charitable giving has been pretty consistent over the last 40 years. And so if you look back from 1980 all the way to today, there's been a handful of recessions, 1980 to 82, again in 91, again in 2001, and then again in 08 and 09. With the exception of 08 and 09, charitable giving has increased every single year since 1980, even in those recession years. And so charitable giving has been a really steady industry. Suffice it to say, these times are challenging, and I don't want to necessarily look back at history and say that's going to predict now. But I've been really impressed with how our higher ed clients and other institutions have responded. We saw the switch to virtual learning happen very quickly. And then now we're seeing virtual events like alumni weekends, reunion weekends. We're even going to start seeing some virtual commencements happening online. So higher ed institutions have been resilient in carrying on. And we've also seen some student relief funds. So organizations, an institution might set up an emergency relief fund to help students that are suffering financial hardship during the COVID crisis. So again, it's been great to see how universities have responded.
But there are a lot of people who are concerned with their own finance, like, am I going to be able to pay the mortgage? My job is furlough and all that. So I would assume there would be less giving during this time.
Sometimes during recession, I mentioned how charitable giving goes up. Occasionally, you'll see the number of donors trim back a little bit, but the amount of money can still increase. and what that means is a very small number of high net worth individuals are still giving in times of recession, sometimes even more money. And so when I mentioned that, Santa Clara $1 billion campaign, donors for that will comprise of, people like you and I that could give $50, $100, $150 gifts, as well as the, type of donors that give 5, 6, sometimes 7-figure gifts. And, those are the people with their names on buildings. So again, even in times of recession, it speaks to the generosity of people in this country. There's still a lot of giving that takes place. And one other point about charitable giving, macro level, it's a much bigger part of our economy than we think. And so annually, $400 billion is given to charity here in the U.S. That's 2% of the GDP, and 100 billion of that 400 billion raised is done by Black clients.
Wow.
So again, it's a big industry.
Some of the trends that we're seeing of sheltering in place is that you have to work at home, you have to study at home. So all of this online learning, training, how much do you think of that is going to remain in higher ed as a permanent solution to cutting costs,
Yeah, well, cutting costs or even in some cases adding value. I think online learning will continue, but I think it will be augmenting, the type of asynchronous learning or synchronous learning, I should say, that you get in the classroom. But just to give you a data point, our partner Microsoft, use of their Teams platform for online learning and collaboration is up 700% since the start of COVID. And I don't see that coming all the way back down. I see that, again, continuing to help, augment classroom learning once folks are back on campus.
Okay. And I'm wondering, on your team of sales folks, now that you are also learning from home, when you onboard new rep or even keeping their knowledge current on a lot of the technologies that you sell, I assume you've shifted to the sales enablement to that online training and learning. Can you share some of the changes that you made, or maybe the best practices in keeping your sales team performing at the high level before the COVID and after the COVID?
I can try, and you're right. We've switched to online, and part of it is the technology, and part of it is how do you keep people focused and motivated in what obviously is a hard time. And so one of the things we've tried to do is increase communication, and be very transparent about what's happening in the market and in our company. People appreciate that transparency in uncertain times. We have tried to identify what's working, obviously, and then share that. And that doesn't have to just come from me or from leadership. We want to make sure our AEs can hear from other peer salespeople on what's working. And so we've been facilitating that collaboration. From a motivation standpoint, sales is a very outcome-driven profession, right? It's about the numbers and what percentage of quota are you and how much did you sell. And these are one of the times I've really tried to make sure my focus as a leader is not only on people's outcomes, but on their effort. What are you putting into it? Are you showing up every day and doing all you can to be successful? And we've really wanted that to come across to keep people engaged. And then lastly, at the end of the day, we're all human and we're all adapting to uncertain times. And you'll want to make sure that your employees are practicing self-care and that they're safe and that they're okay. And I want them to know that I care about them.
I want to ask you about sales effectiveness, because there's some similarities between the high-tech software world of selling SaaS for commercial, right, for profit, and at the same time with the fundraising effort. What works? What sales strategies or tips that can you share out there that's been working really well and proven for you?
Great question and great observation about the parallels in philanthropy and fundraising and what we do. And so there's a stat I like. There's a researcher in Silicon Valley, Steve Martin, the consultant, not the actor. And his research shows that, of software buyers in the tech industry, only 18% view their salesperson or salespeople as trusted advisors. And so now more than ever, I preach to my team, you've got to be in that 18%. You can't afford to be in the other 82. You've got to show up, you've got to care, you've got to ask good questions, and you've got to be able to find ways to help clients. So that's one parallel. And one other piece of advice is, this is a Winston Churchill quote about, I like to remind people, success is not final. Challenges and failure are not fatal, but what really counts is the courage to go on and to give it your all.
Chris, I want to ask you about the money that the government has been rolling out to help small businesses. So with the higher education being a private universities, can they take advantage of that?
Yeah, the CARES Act, great question. Yes, they can. And we've seen, it's basically the amount of money universities are eligible for is based on how many Pell Grants that they give. And so we've seen, small regional universities with small endowments, getting money for this. And these universities are really like small businesses. We've also seen some large universities, Harvard and Yale, were set to get money, and they wound up politely, turning it down. They've got billion-dollar endowments and don't necessarily need, money from the government today. So it's been nice to see large institutions do that. And I know people have been, kind of hoping big business would follow that lead.
So if they take it, are there any strings attached to that? Is that why they turned it down?
They turned it down. My opinion is more on the PR. The look of very large established universities with the Harvards and the Yales of the world literally raise hundreds of millions annually. That's just off fundraising. They've got billion-dollar endowments. It's like a big business, but in this case, providing research and teaching. But to me, it's likely they didn't want to be put in a position to be accused of you kind of have the haves and the have-nots. You don't want the haves accepting government money in a crisis like this.
So during this challenging time, it's affecting everyone, profit to nonprofit, and you're seeing it. What would you say are some of the positive outcomes of this experience we're facing then?
God, I'm so glad you asked that. There's a number from big to small. I mentioned the universities, some student relief funds. One of our clients, Indiana University of Pennsylvania, right outside Philadelphia, IUP, set up a relief fund and quickly raised $190,000 to help more than 250 students who were suffering economic hardships and unable to pay bills due to the economic impact. We've also seen, and you're going to love this story, this gentleman, his name is Captain Tom Moore. He is turning 100 years old. He fought in World War II. He was English, and he set out to raise $1,000 to help healthcare workers in the UK. Well, his campaign, it took off. It went viral. He was on the BBC. Pictures of him in a blue blazer and his World War II medals, and he's been recognized by Boris Johnson. So it takes off. It's raised today more than 32 million pounds, more than $40 million for frontline healthcare workers. This is just one person starting a campaign. It takes off, and there you go.
Wonderful story.
Yeah.
So you're seeing generosity, resiliency, and so these are examples of the positive outcomes that you're seeing during this time.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, this has been a great conversation, Chris. I'm learning so much to hear from you, the higher ed market and the social good that you're doing. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. Thanks a lot for having me. Great questions. It was a pleasure to chat with you.
There you have it. Check it out with Jessica Lee, Chris Krackeler from Black Ball.